This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Final results of the Uganda presidential election expected this afternoon as opposition candidate Bobi Wine cries foul. India begins world's biggest coronavirus vaccination campaign targeting 300 million people. And US President Donald Trump plans departure ceremony for Wednesday next week as Homeland Security prepares to secure Biden inauguration. Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up over the next hour. Beat down jalopies get a new lease of life in Nigeria as mechanics show off their skills. And in sports, the 2021 Africa Nations Championship kicks off today in Cameroon amid COVID-19 concerns. Well, we start in East Africa with the Uganda election, where the Electoral Commission has called on opposition leader Bobi Wine to provide evidence of any fraud allegations in the presidential race. Bobi Wine is alleging electoral fraud and dismissing early results, giving President Yoweri Museveni a clear lead. In partial results from 87% of the polling stations released earlier today by the Electoral Commission, Museveni leads with 58.8%, while Robert Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, has 34.6%. 76-year-old Museveni is seeking a sixth term after almost 4 decades in power. The former pop star Wine has emerged as his main rival. Wine says he felt threatened as soldiers surrounded his home after he made his fraud allegations to the media. Voting took place on Thursday amid a heavy military and police presence. Final results of the election are expected to be announced later today. To South Africa now, where a new locally produced oxygen device could become a game changer in the battle to save COVID-19 patients. The oxygen-efficient respiratory device, or Oxera as it's more commonly known, uses far less oxygen. This is ideal for poorly resourced hospitals. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more.
The Oxera device is expected to be a new weapon in the battle to save COVID-19 patients presenting with severe illness. It bridges an important gap between standard oxygen therapy and ICU-based non-invasive and mechanical ventilation. The device was designed by a team of volunteers and uses a fraction of the oxygen that other medical devices use.
How it works is it's a marrying of a couple of different things that we already use in the hospital environment. So we already use oxygen masks with a bag on them to try and provide a high level of oxygen to the patient. So we use the oxygen bag from that system. We marry that with an anesthetic mask, which has got an inflatable skirt on it that allows you to create a snug fit onto the patient's face.
By combining that with the PEEP valve, which mechanically adjusts the pressure that the patient can breathe out against, it keeps the lungs from collapsing. With 73 tons of oxygen being used every day to treat COVID-19 patients in the Western Cape, supplies are low.
Not only do we not have the oxygen available, but it's expensive. It's quite an expensive commodity. And really many of in fact, the majority of our hospitals that don't have access to the kind of volumes of oxygen that you would need to run high-flow devices. And so their therapy is capped at just oxygen masks at the moment. And so our device helps them to extend that for the very sick patients.
The oxygen device will also be locally produced and forms part of broader efforts to tap into South African innovation.
We're focusing on the South African market initially because that was the original purpose of the design, is to try and address the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa. But as it turns out, and because of our production capacity, we have no problem actually turning to export as well. With a single shift, we can produce 15,000 units a week.
It's not just medical facilities in urban centers that are set to benefit from the device, as those in rural settings are also set to benefit as well due to its efficiency. With oxygen rationing now taking place at public hospitals, its release also comes at a critical time. Andrew, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, let's stay in South Africa, where the country has temporarily halted the 2021 schooling calendar as the second wave of coronavirus infections heads towards a peak. New cases and deaths have spiked since a new variant was discovered in December. More than 1.3 million people have contracted the disease in the last 10 months, while more than 1 million have recovered. But the number of deaths has hastened to over 35,000, raising concerns over resuming the school calendar.
South Africa's second coronavirus wave is unpredictable and spreading fast. With the peak yet to come, education officials have delayed the start of the school year to mid-February.
The Council of Education Ministers, in conjunction with the National Coronavirus Command Council and Cabinet, has taken the decision to delay the reopening of both public and private schools with 2 weeks. This is done to provide relief to the health system, which is already struggling to cope with the current demands.
Teachers Union NAPTOSA has welcomed the decision, but questions why teachers weren't given the same consideration as learners have risen. South Africa has 450,000 educators. It's estimated that almost 2,000 have lost their lives to COVID-19.
The teachers are bearing the brunt of infections at the moment. And as a sector goes, the highest infection and death rate is amongst our teachers and our education workers. And we are really worried about that. But to ask our SMTs, the senior management teams, to come in on the 25th, which is 3 weeks before the learners, seems unreasonable.
South African schools are still closed for the holidays, and the reopening will very much depend on the country's handling of the second wave.
No one exactly knows what turn is it going to take in the next month or two. We are relying on what is happening and the research. So health will, from time to time, advise basic education to say, yes, now you can open, now this can happen.
The private sector, however, runs off a different timetable. Johannesburg's St. David's Marist is one of many independent schools that have kicked off the year but will have to make adjustments.
We have started with orientation programs. We started with getting boys onboarded onto our tech platforms so that if we do go online, they are able to seamlessly move into our Google Classrooms. So for us, it's not going to be a dramatic difference other than obviously our boys will not physically be on campus for that time. We'll move into an online teaching environment for this period.
It certainly hasn't been the smooth start that the Education Department was hoping for after the 2020 calendar was severely disrupted, but South Africa has no choice but to prioritize safety over keeping the academic year intact. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's go to India, where the world's biggest coronavirus vaccination campaign has begun today. The country aims to inoculate around a quarter of the population. That's about 300 million people. Well, for more on that story, we have our correspondent on the line, Ravinda Bawa, who joins us live now from Goa in India. Ravinda, the promised mass vaccination has just begun today. Just give us more details of the homegrown vaccine being given out and how exactly the process is going at this time.
Well, it started this morning with the launch by the Prime Minister. He did a digital launch of the vaccination drive, and more than 3,000 centers were connected digitally in the morning throughout the country. And after that, the whole process started. The plan is to vaccinate 100 people per day at every center, making it 300,000 for today. Although in some centers, the 100 mark could not be reached, but definitely here in Goa there are 7 such centers, and around 700 health workers have to be vaccinated by this evening. Here we are at the North District hospital in Mapsa, and here also since morning we saw a number of health workers queuing up for getting vaccinated. So that's the way the vaccination is going on. It's both in urban and in rural areas. The first focus is on health workers, followed by frontline workers, and only then the elderly and people with comorbidities will be added to the list. It's very important for the health workers. Of course, there have been apprehensions as well because both these vaccines have been given emergency use authorization by the government, and a lot of scientists and experts are doubting the efficacy of these vaccines. But nonetheless, there is a lot of confidence also among health workers. Today morning, we spoke to a number of doctors and nurses who have got themselves vaccinated. They say this is the only prevention apart from mask and social distancing and washing hands, and it's important for us who are dealing with COVID patients on a regular basis to protect ourselves, and so they have happily got themselves voluntarily vaccinated. Mahia.
Right, and there have been questions, Ravinda, about the timing of the mass vaccinations given that the trials had not reached a conclusive end. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, that's what there are two vaccines which have been given emergency use authorization on 3rd of January by the Drug Controller of India. And out of both of these vaccines, the phase 3 trials have not been conducted in India. As far as the Indian vaccine, the Bharat Biotech, the phase 3 trials results have not actually been made public. And as far as the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is considered, the phase 3 trial results from elsewhere have been quoted in order to get that emergency use authorization. The government has faced this challenge and is facing this challenge to build confidence among the people that the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine are not compromised. That's what the Prime Minister said today as well, that there should be no speculation. The scientists and the researchers have assured us that these vaccines are efficient and also safe. That's one challenge which the government is facing. We did hear about certain reports from Delhi and other places where the vaccine of Bharat Biotech, whose phase 3 trials have not yet been made public, have been distributed, and some health workers were not willing to get themselves vaccinated because of the safety concerns. So that is one hurdle I think the government will have to deal with in the near future as well, because among people there is a lot of buzz about that the phase 3 trials are not conducted properly, and maybe the efficacy of the vaccine is not to be trusted. So that is one hurdle which we are seeing the government face, but otherwise there is a lot of positivity because people have become more confident about the vaccine. The markets are doing well after the vaccines have come out. So there is a lot of confidence as well. So it's a mixed feeling. There are always critiques and there are always supporters of any step which the government takes. Mahia.
Ravinda, thank you very much for speaking to us. Ravinda Bauer reporting live there from Goa in India. Moving on, the EU governments have warned that the credibility of their COVID vaccination programs is at risk after Pfizer announced a slowdown in vaccine deliveries. The U.S. pharmaceutical giant initially said the deliveries were proceeding on schedule, but it now says shipments to EU countries will be delayed from late January to early February. 6 EU nations have said that's unacceptable and that the delay will impact their vaccination schedules. Pfizer says it will provide a significant increase in doses in late February and March to help deliver the promised quantities to the EU. Now to the latest on the COVID-19 pandemic in China. Officials have warned of more risks after the latest resurgence of infections have been found to be related to imported cases or contaminated imported cold chain products. Hundreds of such cases have been reported since December. On Friday, the Chinese mainland reported 130 new infections. 115 are local cases, of which 90 are in Hebei province, 23 in Heilongjiang province, and 2 in Beijing. Another 15 imported cases were also reported in 6 different provinces and municipalities, and the northeastern province of Jilin has reported 49 new asymptomatic cases. Meanwhile, Algeria is set to receive a Chinese-developed COVID-19 vaccine. The country will receive doses of CoronaVac before the end of the month. This is according to Algeria's Minister for Communication. The country will also receive 50,000 doses of the Russian-developed COVID-19 vaccine, Sputnik.
I think that relying on the Chinese and Russian vaccines is a good decision, and it can contribute a lot in this battle against the COVID-19 virus.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump is reported to be planning to leave Washington next Wednesday before Joe Biden's inauguration. The Associated Press says Trump will hold his own departure ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base. He'll then board Air Force One for the last time, bound for Florida. Meanwhile, Homeland Security officials are preparing for more tension as the Biden inauguration unfolds. The deployment of up to 25,000 National Guards has been authorized, and they'll be allowed to use lethal force if needed to prevent a repeat of last week's violence at the Capitol. Giles Gibson has the latest.
The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI and several other agencies have put together this joint security bulletin. And the main conclusion from this bulletin is that domestic extremists are the most likely threat in the build-up to Joe Biden's inauguration as President of the United States on the 20th of January. But it's not just Washington, D.C. that these agencies are worried about. Take a listen to Ken Cuccinelli, who is the Acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security.
There is a good deal of online chatter. It isn't just about Washington, by the way. There's also conversations about state capitals, though very unspecific. No particular state capital mentioned or identified. Just this elevated online chatter that indicates a higher level of tension right now. And so we're raising our security level, and we're doing it across the country.
Giles Gibson for CGTN in Washington.
Stay with us as we take a short break here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up when we return. Senegal culls thousands of birds as it traces origin of a bird flu outbreak. And the UN warns that nearly 2/3 of South Sudanese population faces acute food shortage this year.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, a strain of the bird flu has been detected in Senegal. The government has gone about culling thousands of birds and is investigating the origins of the outbreak. Astatal has more.
The outbreak of the H5N1 bird flu was first reported on a poultry farm. Senegal's veterinary services report over half the birds were killed out of a flock of 100,000. This comes as the country is dealing with the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
A health response is needed at this time to prevent the disease from spreading. I think that economically, the disease could put the poultry sector at risk, especially as the sector is already hard hit by the COVID-19 crisis.
The outbreak was first discovered in Chess, a region east of the capital, Dakar. Officials are still investigating its origins. Those working at poultry farms in the meantime are trying their best to mitigate the damage.
We disinfect all persons and vehicles that need to enter our premises. For the time being, we have suspended all foreign visits until further notice. We have also closed all ventilation ducts on our site to prevent any air that might be contaminated from entering.
Infections in humans usually occurs when one has come in close contact with the infected birds or environments contaminated with H5N1. Human-to-human transmission is still rare, though the disease, according to the WHO, has a mortality rate of around 60%. Astatal, CGTN.
The United Nations is warning that 7.5 million people, or two-thirds of the population in South Sudan, will face acute food shortages this year. Heavy rains and seasonal flooding since July last year have adversely affected more than 1 million farmers, resulting in widespread damage to agriculture and property. CGTN's Patrick Oyet brings us this report.
Heavy rains and seasonal flooding since July last year have adversely affected more than 1 million farmers, resulting in widespread damage to agriculture and property.
We are suffering. We run away from flooding, but here we need water, we need food, we need places to sleep. We've lost everything because of flooding. We've left our homes that we built, and here there are no tents for some of us to sleep.
Once farmers, these displaced people are now entirely reliant on food aid, and with no farm tools and no land, they are unable to change their situation. The community owning the land where the displaced are settled says they are unwilling to lease their land either to the government or to the displaced, fearing that once they lease the land, its ownership may not be granted back. There are a number of cases of land conflicts in the country. The United Nations is warning that food aid will be needed for the next 3 months at least, as these displaced people have no other options. The government says it is working to address the situation.
We have difficulties in terms of raising funds, enough resources, either by international community, either by the government, in order so as to address the humanitarian needs in this country. And Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs is doubling its effort, trying what it could do in terms of response.
The UN says of the people affected by the acute food shortage, 1.4 million are children who will suffer malnutrition. It is urging international donors to provide the necessary funds to try and address the situation. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
University lecturers in Nigeria have refused to resume academic activities, saying that not enough COVID-19 protocols have been put in place. What's more, lecturers at public institutions only recently reached a settlement with the government over a lengthy pay dispute. Here is Deji Badmus with more on that story now.
Like every other government-owned university, the University of Lagos has been shut for close to a year. A 10-month strike over pay only ended in December. Students were looking forward to the resumption of classes. A union representing their lecturers is insisting the requisite COVID-19 protocols are put in place first.
With the upsurge in the second wave of the coronavirus, it is the conviction of our union that without putting in place necessary infrastructure, implementing the non-pharmaceutical aspect of the COVID-19 protocol, it will be suicidal to bring students back to campus. Particularly because not only are the classrooms overstretched, the hostels are overcrowded.
Classrooms at the university have not been reorganized to allow for physical distancing. Hand-washing facilities are hardly seen around. It's the same situation in the majority of public universities in the country.
The aviation sector. Immediately after the lockdown and flights were to start operation, you saw what was done at the airports. A lot of redesigning, a lot of reorganization with requisite funding from government. So I asked the question, why can't same be done for universities?
The university has now fixed its resumption date for January 25th, but for now, the authorities say learning will only take place virtually.
It looks promising and I hope it's going to be okay. And we hope there will not be another strike like this because it's really tasking on the mental space of the students, and a lot of students have left Unilag. A lot of my friends actually have left Unilag for private universities.
Other universities in the country are also considering the virtual learning option. Of course, there are challenges with online learning here, but with the long closure of universities in the country, many say waiting out the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic before learning can take place is really not an option. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The African Union is asking African countries to sign up to acquire COVID-19 vaccines through a deal it has reached with 3 manufacturers for 270 million doses this year. The AU wants member states to put in their requests through an online platform. Coletta Anjohi spoke to the director of the AU's Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. John Nkengasong.
The African Union is aiming to immunize at least 60% of the continent's population against COVID-19 in order to achieve herd immunity. 270 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines will be bought from 3 manufacturers, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson. The first batch of 50 million will arrive between April and June this year.
Countries should now take on this. It is the ball is in the camp of the countries to engage and start placing their orders. Okay, so that we can actually know the volumes that have been pre-ordered, and then the Afreximbank can engage with this, the manufacturers, and do the payments.
Afreximbank will make an advance commitment of up to $2 billion to the manufacturers on behalf of the countries. Individual countries will then agree with Afreximbank on how to pay back for what they have ordered, either through their own resources or through a payment facility that will have them spread out installments over 5 years. The World Bank is also offering about $5 billion either for countries to buy more vaccines or pay for delivery of vaccines committed by Afreximbank. The Africa CDC says this should help countries prepare for vaccine rollouts.
Especially also given that the World Bank is talking to countries and making available resources to be used for vaccination and not just procurement of vaccines. So the opportunities are out there for this accelerated preparedness to occur. It shouldn't be a complex exercise at all. I think if you remove the whole thinking of ultra coaching, which I don't think I subscribe to that, then it becomes a logistic arrangement that is very, very within reach of our capabilities as a continent.
Distribution of the acquired vaccines will be highly dependent on individual member states, but guided by a strategy from the Africa CDC.
We need to also factor the fact that 80% of our economy is informal, and say, okay, how do we expand these vaccines to the informal sector, like the young people that are out there hustling to earn $1 or $2 a day, and with all the motorbikes, the bus drivers and others. So that's where the community engagement component is so important, so that the vaccines become available and there's also willingness to uptake those vaccines.
This new acquisition complements the approximately 600 million doses the continent will receive from the COVAX facility. The global scheme aims to immunize 20% of the continent's population. And while Africa has not yet secured enough vaccine supply to cover its 60% immunization target, the journey towards mass inoculation is getting underway. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Right, well, it's just about time for us to check in on all the latest from the world of business. Here's what we have in store. The Aswan High Dam in Egypt marks 50 years since it was inaugurated. And beat-down jalopies get a new lease of life in Nigeria as mechanics show off their skills.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Time for the business. With the Spring Festival fast approaching, China's demand for food from overseas increases this time of year. But with the pandemic still raging across many parts of the world, Chinese cities serving as the first port of entry for imported goods are ramping up precautions. CGTN's Zhao Yunfei is in Guangzhou to check out a newly launched track and trace system for cold chain foods.
Even after imported goods clear customs, precautions are in place every step of the way. In Guangzhou, companies that import meat have tightened testing measures before selling the food on the market. From collecting samples to disinfecting their produce, the entire process is carefully recorded.
If there's surface-level transmission, it'll be a big blow to the entire industry. Consumers will also have no confidence in imported products. Strict supervision is necessary.
The pandemic has made people more cautious of the origins of their food. By scanning the QR code, wholesalers and their customers can get detailed information on the food source, suppliers, and the time of disinfection. The QR code system has been adopted by several cold chain networks in the city. The technology helps to make the process of imports more transparent.
In order to tighten closed-loop management, we encourage enterprises to use digitalization methods to strengthen product traceability.
China's Department of Disease Control predicts no major resurgence of the coronavirus during the Spring Festival holiday, but the increasing number of cold chain parcels could heighten the risk.
Under low temperature conditions, it's indeed necessary to be alert to the risk of imported cold chain food being contaminated and causing imported outbreaks.
Zheng Weisheng says the pandemic is a threat to his industry, and he says the company is normalizing current tracing standards and digging in for a long-term battle against the virus. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Guangzhou.
Now, the world's largest consumer technology convention, CES, has ended this week. The 4-day event made history this year by going all virtual due to the coronavirus pandemic. The show revealed exciting new innovations from Chinese companies, from smartphones with extendable displays to self-driving technology straight out of a sci-fi movie. Yang Zhao has the story.
Let's find some new inventions, shall we?
This is CES, the world's largest carnival for technology and electronic enthusiasts. It's been celebrated in Las Vegas since the 1970s, drawing huge crowds from around the world.
It's a revolutionary mobile phone.
But like countless other events, this year's convention fell victim to the coronavirus.
Now, CES 2021 is making history, and I'm so excited that you're part of it. It's our first ever all-digital event.
As tensions between Washington and Beijing continue to mount, companies blacklisted by the U.S. government, including Huawei and drone maker DJI, were absent as expected. But China is hardly without any representation. Major league players like Lenovo and TCL, to small startups making splashes, are in the virtual convention. Along with the annual refresh of the company's laptop lineups, Lenovo has unveiled a new AR glass targeting enterprise users. The modular headset can project up to 5 virtual screens onto its transparent displays, boosting productivity without taking up more physical space. Unlike many existing AR and VR headsets that are bulky and heavy, the new Think Reality series are fully portable and weighs just about 300 grams. TV and display manufacturers this year are fighting for viewers' attention by introducing big and small upgrades to their existing technologies, from Samsung's new micro-LED TVs to LG's transparent OLED displays. Chinese TV giant TCL has also released its innovative OD0 display technology, shrinking the distance between the backlight and the LCD display layer to literally zero. It allows vivid images to really pop out right in front of their viewers. Both TCL and LG have teased rollable display smartphones for 2021. LG has officially announced its partnership with China's display technology leader BOE to make their rollable screen phones a reality in 2021. Electric vehicles and autonomous driving technology stole the show this year. General Motors highlighted their historic shift of focus to EV manufacturing. Chinese autonomous driving startup Deep Route AI has brought us an upgrade to its last year's CES award-winning self-driving system. The company's machine learning platform is heavily focused on energy efficiency, affordability, and compatibility.
Now, steering Nigeria's economy out of recession will require urgent policy changes. That's according to a number of economists there. They say Nigeria is still battling a declining oil market and the after effects of COVID-19 lockdowns. But as CGTN's Phil Ihaza reports, some experts are, however, predicting a more ambitious V-shaped economic recovery.
Nigeria's economy was fully submerged in recession by the fourth quarter of last year. A dip in crude oil prices and a slowdown, if not complete halt, to many economic activities for more than 6 months due to the coronavirus pandemic drove the economy into the ground.
The Nigerian GDP has declined by minus 3.62%. In real terms, that is in the third quarter, following a much larger contraction of minus 6.1% in the second quarter of 2020. Following the traditional definition, this means that Nigeria is technically in a recession.
The picture isn't entirely bleak as Nigeria looks forward. The government has lifted lockdowns and business activities have resumed. Oil prices are beginning to recover, and an optimistic survey by one company, Sigma Pensions, claims that as long as business activities continue, the country will experience a V-shaped economic recovery. But such a rapid bounce back is not on the cards, according to many analysts, who argue the only way out of recession is for the government to make some rapid policy changes to diversify the economy and crucially make Nigeria less reliant on oil.
We have to use a many-pronged approach, attacking all the issues all at the same time. The agricultural sector, which is supposed to be our second mainstay, must immediately restart. Right now, farmers are not on their farms. Most of the farmers have been decimated and sent out of their farms. And so, if we don't kickstart almost all the sectors at the same time, I don't see that recovery coming anytime soon.
A World Bank report shows that beyond the loss of lives from COVID-19 last year, more than 5 million more Nigerians are expected to slip into poverty.
The implications of a prolonged economic recession is that many more people will become poor. And that's not good news for a country like Nigeria, where nearly 100 million people, about half the country's population, live in abject poverty.
However, the government claims to be doing its best to achieve a V-shaped recovery.
Let me also state that this administration is fully aware of the current economic situation and is working round the clock to reverse the trend and restore the economy on the path of sustainable, inclusive growth. To achieve this, government had developed an economic sustainability plan to cushion the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and is already vigorously implementing these policies that are aimed at stabilizing the economy.
The economic sustainability plan set out by the government involves a $6 billion grant aimed at protecting small businesses from the impact of the pandemic. The hope is that this will make a difference soon. But even if Nigeria does outperform other sub-Saharan economies in 2021, experts say long-term systemic problems restraining the economy mean radical reforms are needed. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
And staying in Nigeria, auto technicians in the country are taking car makeovers to a new level. Inspired by the Pimp My Ride entertainment series, car enthusiasts have embraced the service that transforms even the most run-down jalopy. And as CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports, the rising demand in the business is driving large numbers of youths to learn the craft and set up their own body shops.
This SUV is undergoing a final phase of upgrade at this auto shop in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The modern garage is a one-stop shop for all kinds of automobile services, from repairs to maintenance and detailing. But a team of young technicians here are changing the scene of traditional auto shop services. They pimp accidented, rusty or old vehicles and make them roadworthy and admirable again.
We take in their vehicles and change some body parts and some interior parts of the vehicle as well to match the model year that the customer is expecting the car to be, and then paint the car and do the general body work and deliver a car that looks like it has been bought brand new from the market to the customer at minimal cost. But the front and rear bumpers, the headlights, the fenders, the back lights as well.
Most Nigerians love cars, but a greater majority cannot afford the latest versions of their choice vehicles. That's why the option of having their old ones converted with features of the new additions is an appealing idea. This has made the car pimping business a lucrative one.
As for instance, a Toyota Prado 2012, we want to convert it to a 2018 Toyota Prado. Well, at Autospar, we'll do it for you at the rate of 5 million or thereabout, because there is a lot of things that need to be changed. Spend nothing less than 4.3, 4, 5 thereabout. So minimum, maybe 400,000 gain on the pimping.
The garage also offers free internship to Nigerian youths and students interested in car pimping business.
We have those kind of programs running here, and the best thing about this here is that we students and other people that want to come and learn this craft, we don't charge them a fee. We just need their seriousness and their dedication and their commitment to learning this.
It looks like fun work, but finding quality vehicle parts is one of the greatest challenges here. Clients' expectations, too, may be higher than their budget. But despite the challenges, the team here believes there's a whole new sector to discover and harness in the car pimping business. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, wine lovers look away now. South Africa's embattled wine industry could lose an estimated $100 million worth of stock as it runs out of space to store excess wine. The new harvest is starting amid a third alcohol sales ban threatening the financial viability of one of the biggest employers in the Western Cape. Angelo Coppola picks up the story.
SA Breweries is challenging the constitutionality of the third ban. The company says the first two bans saw 165,000 people lose their jobs, with another 100,000 people moving into poverty as a result of the alcohol bans.
We're looking at tens of millions of litres, but that's still a lot of wine. That is an issue because obviously cellars are full and people need to harvest, and we need to bring in the new harvest. So we're looking at probably about 65% of the previous harvest not being sold yet, which is a huge issue for the industry because cellars have to be cleared so that we can actually go into production and we've got space. The impact's been really significant. I mean, if they say that the ban will only be lifted on the 15th of February, we will have not been able to trade in South Africa for 5.5 months of our financial year, and 50% of our business is local business.
The wine industry employs some 500,000 people with an annual turnover of around $500 million. The three alcohol bans have been devastating.
Wine tourism is a very important part of our business. Normally, Creation has 64,000 visitors a year visiting us. Well, obviously, we are at half that amount this year so far. And the impact is significant. We have 50 people that work in wine tourism in our tasting room. And, you know, we had to retrench 20 people. We had no choice to do that. A few months ago, we managed to bring most of them back on board when we were allowed to open up again. And we're in a precarious position yet again.
The wine industry was caught completely off guard when South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced another lockdown late in December.
We had a full book of reservations until, you know, the 15th of January. And so we had to obviously cancel all of those reservations, and we've now had to cancel reservations going forward until the ban is lifted.
The wine industry in South Africa is in a state of flux at the moment, and decisions have to be made quickly, otherwise it's going to suffer irreparable damage. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, Friday, January the 15th, marked the 50th anniversary of the Aswan High Dam. It was inaugurated in 1971 by then Egyptian President Anwar Sadat, a massive feat of construction that has shaped the course of modern-day Egypt. The dam's construction changed the very landscape of the country, sparing farmers from seasonal drought and flooding, while also generating electricity and spurring Egypt's rapid development.
It took 45,000 workers back in January 1971 decades to build the 35,000 cubic meters of rock and a loan from the former USSR of some $12 million. The construction of the Aswan High Dam was the project of the century, and the people of Egypt were fully behind it. The 366-foot high dam has 17 times as much sand and stone as the greatest pyramid of Giza, and once supplied as much as 80% of Egypt's electricity.
Back in the day, before the dam was built, the Nile floods used to last around 4 months, and the water used to flood the area from here to the west side of the Nile, and farmers sailed in a traditional boat to harvest their corn crops.
But it was not all good news and development. There were whole villages along the Nile who were displaced, not to mention Abu Simbel temples that literally had to be moved to be saved from the flood area that later became known as Lake Nasser. For years, the dam served as the main source of power for the country, which has recently needed to invest in other sources to meet the needs of its booming population.
Since the inauguration of the High Dam and in the last 50 years, the farmlands increased with around 4 million acres so far. The tourism increased, it saved Egypt from flooding, which is the biggest blessing as it protected towns and villages and Egyptian monuments as well.
The river is formed by 2 tributaries, the Blue Nile originating from Lake Tana in Ethiopia and the White Nile from Lake Victoria. The project ensured an adequate supply of water all year.
Now flooding is still present, and we still see what happens in Sudan every year. It was the same in Egypt before the dam. We also witnessed periodic droughts. The biggest in the modern era was from 1980 to 1987. 7 dry years we witnessed in the African continent. But the Egyptian citizen did not suffer from it because of the high dam.
In the 1980s, a prolonged drought dropped the Nile to its lowest level since 1913, and the upstream countries faced drought and famine. But Egypt was spared thanks to Lake Nasser, created by the dam, providing an alternate source of water. Although the Aswan High Dam also had negative side effects, it increased the salt content of the soil used to grow food, holding back the rich silt that acted as fertilizer. But for Egypt and her people, the benefits outweigh the negative. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, it's just about time for the sports. After this short break, here's what's coming up. The 2021 Africa Nations Championships kicks off today in Cameroon.